Institute of Counselling, Skills of Counselling. Tape 4, Exploration Skills, Summarising and Focusing.
I think it might be helpful at this point to review the 3 core qualities which a counsellor should develop. First, empathy. Second, unconditional positive regard. And third, genuineness. Okay? So now, returning to our analogy of the wound. The counsellor needs all these qualities to help the client open up and explore their wound themselves. Now, here's a gauge by which we can measure the quality of trust established with the client. The thermometer of trust. It shows us if we've managed to establish the warm, accepting atmosphere produced by our projection of the 3 core qualities. Now, if the client is making only general statements, this indicates that only a low level of intimacy or trust exists. If, on the other hand, the client has moved to making specific statements, this indicates that on the thermometer of trust, a large degree of intimacy and trust exists. And it's the core qualities displayed by the counsellor of empathy, unconditional positive regard, and genuineness which help the client to travel from low to high trust.
That's an interesting idea. Again, it's the qualities the counsellor has which seem to make the difference.
We now want to look at 2 more exploration skills, summarising and focusing. And Kathy and Peter are going to take part in a situation for us. Now, when do you think we would want to use summarising? Kathy?
If you don't seem to be going anywhere.
That's right. Summarising is an exploration skill which can help the client to move forward, especially if they're rambling, incoherent, or simply repeating their story over and over again. Summarising is a way to break through these barriers to understanding, and there are at least 3 ways in which to do it. These 3 summarising responses are contrast response, choice point response, and uppermost issue response. So let's look at the contrast response first. Basically, we ask the client to make a contrast, having first of all summarized what has been shared. And the client is asked to make one of 3 contrasts. The choices are to contrast the past with the crisis event, which is the present, or to contrast the present with the possible future, or to contrast the past with the possible future. So, Kathy, over to you and your first scenario.
This week my divorce came through. I'm left with 3 children to look after all by myself, and I've really no idea how I'm going to make ends meet. Well, I'm glad it's all over in a way, but everything's still quite painful. I've no idea how I'm going to cope with looking after the children and earning some money, because the payments from my ex-husband certainly aren't going to be enough.
Peter, ask Kathy for a contrast, past with present response.
Kathy, this week your divorce has come through and you're left with 3 children and not much money. Share with me what it felt like before the divorce with what it feels like now.
That was good, Peter. Now, ask Kathy for a present with the possible future response.
Kathy, your divorce has come through this week. You're left with 3 children and not much money. Share with me what it might be like when your finances are worked out with what it feels like now.
Fine. Now ask Kathy for a past with possible future contrast response.
Kathy, you're now divorced. You haven't got much money and you're left with 3 children. With this in mind, what was it like before the divorce compared with what it might feel like when things settled down and you've made a new life for yourself?
Right, thanks, Peter. The content of your 3 contrast responses was good. Now, don't forget to keep everything tentative and sensitive with your delivery. Okay? Now, moving on. A second way of summarizing is by asking the client to make a choice point response. Now, here we list the problems and feelings which the client seems to have, and from this list, we ask the client to choose one point to explore. Of all these problems which we've discussed, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, which one do you think it would be best to start with? Okay, Kathy, read out your next scenario.
I'm the mother of 3 children and a housewife. There's only one car which my husband takes to work. We live in the countryside and there's no other transport. I'm stuck at home and I feel isolated and depressed. I don't think my husband listens to me or takes my problems seriously.
Peter, respond to Kathy with a choice point response.
There's quite a lot there, Kathy. You are a mother of 3 children and you are a housewife. You live in the countryside and your husband takes the only means of transport to work with him. You feel isolated, depressed, and it seems that your husband just doesn't listen to you or take your problems seriously. Of all these issues, which would you like to discuss first?
Fine. By the way, it was excellent that you also included the client's feelings in your summary. Now, the third way of summarizing is particularly appropriate if the client seems to be almost lost or immobilized by their problems. This is called the uppermost issue response, and it involves you, the counsellor, tentatively suggesting the issue that seems to be uppermost to the client, or the one which is causing the most difficulty. Now, of all these problems which we've discussed, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, it seems that problem 3 is causing the most distress. How do you feel about us starting with this one? Okay. Peter, now respond to Kathy with an uppermost issue response.
Kathy, you are a mother of 3 children and you are a housewife. You live in the countryside and your husband takes the only means of transport to work with him. You feel isolated, depressed, and it seems that your husband doesn't listen to you or take your problems seriously. Of all these issues, Kathy, the problem that, as you say, your husband doesn't listen to you seems to be causing the most difficulty. Perhaps we can start with this one.
Good, Peter. Perhaps a little more tentative in your delivery, but that'll come with practice. Now, the exploration skill of focusing helps the client move from general statements to specific statements. We reflect general statements from the client and request specific statements. And the intention is for the client to move from soft focus to hard focus on issues during the counselling session. Peter?
Let's back up a bit here. As you say, Kathy, you are stuck at home. Tell me a bit about what this means for you in your daily routine.
Well, it means that I get bored mooching around the house. I get irritated with the kids, even though it's not their fault, and I just don't seem to enjoy doing anything.
Think about your business, Andy. What is it like now compared to what it was like when you were working as an employee?
I was working for somebody then. Now I'm my own boss. Before it was like, yes, sir, no, sir. As my father always said, you don't get rich by digging someone else's ditch.
Yes, but we're digging our own ditch and we're still not rich.
What has it felt like, digging your own ditch?
Problem after problem. Lack of money. We owe money. Financial insecurity. We never know what's going to happen next. Bouts of depression.
But let's back up a bit there. Mary, you've listed these issues. There not being enough money, the way that you owe money, you don't know what the future holds, and the depression. Now, which should we start with?
Well, the money is the biggest problem.
What do you expect? It's not easy to start a business. Money doesn't grow on trees, you know.
From your expressions and from what you've said, it seems you both agree that money is a major factor. In the last 15 minutes, can we agree to discuss this issue without interrupting each other?
Yes, I suppose so.
Institute of Counselling, hello.
Hi, it's Liz.
Yes, and that's it, really. I was looking forward to finishing work and having more free time, but I just seem to have no desire to do anything now. In fact, I feel a bit depressed, which is not like me. Well, at 55, most people are starting to look forward to retirement. And I also thought that it would be great. It's not that I didn't have outside interests.
Let's back up a bit here, Jean. Concerning your loneliness, depression and tiredness, which of these seems to be causing the most problems?
Well, my lack of energy is really getting me down. When I think back to my work as a nursing sister in the wards, I took pride in how much work I could do.
If you had to put that lack of energy into one word, Jean, what would that be?
Tired.
Being tired, then. It does seem to say a lot to you about who you are.
Tired. It means that I wake up not feeling as alive as I think I should be. That I go to sleep not being able to think. I'll wake up feeling able to cope with a new day. Haunted.
This tiredness seems to be almost haunting you. Tell me what this is all about.
I really don't know why I should be haunted. But it's like a tape in my head playing over and over again. I suppose that's what's causing me to feel haunted.
Great. I always enjoy not having to drive anywhere when I'm working from home.
Sometimes I find it good just to have someone to talk to. Oh, to be quite honest with you, Liz, sometimes what I see in teaching can make me quite upset and angry. And other times I feel good that I'm a teacher. Oh, just now, I seem to feel really angry most of the time.
Angry?
Yes, at the injustice. Probably the majority of children at the school where I teach come from an Asian background, as I do. But I'm really concerned about this kind of hold over my girls, who tell me they're virtually imprisoned at home, instead of being able to carry on with their studies.
Yes. Yes.
I guess a lot of the girls that I teach think I've made it with my job. And it's true. I struggled hard with my parents to get my education. I feel I'm put on a pedestal, and I can sometimes find it a struggle not to get involved personally in the girls' problems.
So, we're looking at your girls, your feelings of injustice, what's happening to them at home, and educational issues. I'm also aware that you're raising issues from your own culture. Perhaps we could make a start by exploring your feelings of anger, which seem to be triggered by issues of injustice.
I'll give you an example that really bothered me. A young girl, I suppose about 16, she asked to see me after school. She's a really bright, grade A pupil doing her exams this summer. As soon as we were alone, she burst into floods of tears.
Floods of tears?
Yes. She told her dad she wanted to stay on at school to study economics. Maybe even eventually to go to university. He threw a fit. He told her he wouldn't let her study after the summer. Either she had to get a job or stay at home with her mother, learning how to be a woman. The threat was, if she stepped out of line and tried to stay on for the economics, she would be severely disciplined.
So this young girl, one of your students, has told you her story, and this has made a great impact on you. Tell me some more about this.
Well, listening to these kids who are torn between Western values and traditional Asian ones, it brings up all sorts of stuff in me that I find difficult to deal with.
What kind of stuff?
Well, yes, I listen to what they're going through, though I do my best not to get personally involved. Yet inside, my stomach churns with anger and frustration. I can see where both the parents and the girls are coming from, but that doesn't make it any easier. Oh, and in fact, it's a mess.
What was the outcome of the case you mentioned?
Actually, it didn't turn out too badly.
There was a sort of compromise outcome as far as she was concerned. She did leave school and she did get a job. But she managed to get a job in a bank, and through the bank did banking exams, which involved quite a bit of economics, so she was still able to pursue something that interested her.
There are a lot of issues here, Nazreen. Let's take a look at what we've talked about so far. In teaching, you sometimes feel angry, concerned and troubled by your students, especially the issue of Western values versus traditional Asian values. This you find difficult to deal with, and you try not to get personally involved. It seems as if it's the issue of Western versus Asian values that is causing you, as you say, to feel really angry.
It's strange to hear it laid out on the table like that, but yes, what you've said there does seem to pull everything together. Hearing it like that, I suppose I'm feeling pulled in all sorts of different directions.
Thank goodness that's the last appointment. I've had enough for one day. These sessions are always pretty demanding, and today's been no exception. Right, time to switch off and relax. Watch some telly.
To what extent can we totally suspend our own values when listening to the client's story? The thermometer of trust is one way of gauging the quality of a counselling relationship. What other ways might there be? What tensions exist between being true to yourself and true to your clients?